Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be. Welcome to the Irv Homer Show. It's Monday, March the 16th, and it is 8 o'clock here on the East Coast, and that is daylight saving time. We bring you this program every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometimes we have guests, Pearl Polto talking about credit, Bill Kearney talking about gambling, and of course last Friday night, Valerie Morrison. And if you check our website, at www.irvhomer.com. You can see when the guests will appear on the program. The other nights I do my own program and speak with you, the listeners and viewers of the Irv Homer Show. You can email me at evilerv@irvhomer.com. That's evilerv@irvhomer.com. We answer all our email and are really interested in what you have to say on the email. One thing I found extremely interesting in my career is that so many young people that have crossed paths with me over the years check the website at www.irvhomer.com and remember, and I guess it's kind of braggadocio for me to say, the influence that I've had on their lives. And it was just so rewarding to receive those emails. And for those of you who are listening and viewing the program who I've had the influence on, I appreciate all your kind words. And even adults, such as I ran into some folks last night at a new restaurant on 611 called Luigi's Seafood. And it looks like just like a little old stand out there. But the food there is excellent, and we'll talk about some of the spots that I think you should be aware of. Once again, we're broadcasting from irvhomer.com. The website is www.irvhomer.com. You can email me at evilerv@irvhomer.com. And RGH Computer Services put this whole package together. If you have a computer problem that you need solved without taking a second mortgage, people who are experiencing computer problems, simply give them a call at 215-322-8685, 215-322-8685, and we do have means of communication here in the studio, and you can reach me by live telephone at 215-253-8877. 215-253-8877 gives you access to be on the air with phone conversation. There is also a chat room. I suppose the big conversation across the dials and all this weekend has been the bailout of AIG. And some of the misinformation and some of the questions that should be asked about this bailout has been partial, some of it distorted, some of it biased. And as I've said many, many times before, when you look at a situation, and I know it may be repetitious and it may be boring, but looking at the complexity of a situation like the bailout of TARP, which is the Troubled Asset Program, the Troubled Asset Relief Program is TARP, Troubled Asset Relief Program. It is so complex that what you hear is bits and pieces and parts of what this whole government expenditure. Excuse me, I made an error. And I want to impress on you folks listening and viewing the program right now. There is no government bailing out AIG, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler. There is no government money bailing them out. It is the taxpayers' money. Our money is being used to bail out and to stimulate the economy. And maybe if the news reporters and the politicians, including the President of the United States, would emphasize that when he signs an executive order, or the Secretary of the Treasury, or the head of the Fed make statements of a bailout, they should excuse themselves by saying, ladies and gentlemen, as a representative of the taxpayers of this country, it is my responsibility to spend their money as I feel, and as Secretary of the Treasury and the head of the Federal Reserve Bank feels necessary to stimulate the economy. It is not my money as president. It is not the Congress's money as representatives. It is the American taxpayers' money that we are going to loan you to recoup and re-stimulate your business. But I never hear these clowns, including the president, say that he is not spending his money for some government entity out in outer space, but stating specifically that I am loaning out the taxpayers' money, the people that you depend on to buy your products, to buy your goods, to buy your service. And I, as the President of the United States, or your congressman or senator, have a responsibility to protect their investment. And since you people did not know how to protect your investment, it is my responsibility to protect the taxpayers of this country. And yet, if you take a look at the way the media is presented, or the way the politicians, including the president, makes a presentation, we taxpayers, you taxpayers, feel immune to the fact that, well, it's the government's money. I've had people in private conversations say to me, well, the government's give. Where do you idiots think the money comes from? April Fool's Day, which is April the 15th, which I declare is really April Fool's Day, you'll find out where the money comes from. If you're in business for yourself, you will send in the taxes due this year and then pay your estimated tax for next year, hoping that you're still in business next year. And that is the money that is used by the government to bail out and stimulate the economy. Now, if the media and the politicians don't explain to you that they're using your money, our money, for this stimulus package and bailout, it's incumbent upon you, the people of America, in your conversation with your friends and your churches and your synagogues and your mosques, on the street corner, talking to your newspaper man, to say, wait a minute, the government is not bailing anybody out of anything. We, the taxpayers, are bailing you out. And in addition to bailing out private industry, we're bailing out the government. So who is the sucker in this thing? We get double taxation as taxpayers. A, we have to bail out private business because they're an inadequate way of conducting their business. B, we have to bail out the government because they screwed up in the regulations that should have prevented these things in the first place. And it distresses me no end when I hear the president and I hear Congress and I hear the Senate talk about the president. Why don't Mitch McConnell, the Republican Party, get on there and say, in response to the Democrat speech on Saturday, we Republicans represent you, taxpayers. We're not objecting to this as Republicans. We're not objecting to this as Democrats. We're spending your money, Mr. and Mrs. America, to bail out these corporations. We hope we're doing it to benefit you. But the government, we the government, have no money at all. We the president, I the president, I can't write a check about it. I'm using your money, ladies and gentlemen. And think about it. They're using your money, my money, to bail out. And April the 15th, if it doesn't hit you in the head by then, that we are bailing out private industry, that we are bailing out the investment companies, that we are bailing out AIG, that we're bailing out the federal government, that we're bailing out the debt to China, who is very nervous right now about whether or not we can pay our debt. It's not the government, it's not the president, it's not Congress. So get that through your heads. And I, as a taxpayer, object to using my money to bail anybody the hell out. We do give to charity in this country. We donate thousands and thousands of dollars to charity, millions of dollars to charity. That's voluntary. But don't be misled by this nonsense that the government is bailing them out. Because the government doesn't have any money to bail anybody out. And if I leave no other message tonight except that message, I feel like I've accomplished my mission behind this microphone and behind this television camera. And when the taxpayers finally get fed up enough, and these idiots on talk radio get truthful enough, we may end up with a tax revolt in this country. Isn't it amazing that Congress has to meet certain guidelines and deadlines for budgets? Unions have the right to strike. Teachers have the right to strike. The only person that can't strike without going to jail are we, the taxpayers. If we strike, the Gestapo agency of America, the Internal Revenue Service, will make our life a living hell. Well, how about the taxpayers having a right to strike? Legally. Where we can put money in escrow for our taxes. And until such time as government, our elected representatives, Democrat, Republican, I don't care who it is, until such time as they spend our money prudently and act in conscience to protect Americans, you and me, the taxpayer, they don't get a dime. I don't object to paying taxes, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't think the average American objects to paying taxes. What we object to is the fact that we're not given any representation and we don't have any say in the indiscriminate spending of our money. And I'm getting damn fed up about it. We have a right by the Constitution that guarantees us the right to go on strike against an oppressive government. We paid for wars that we should have never been involved in. We're paying for wars now that we should have never been involved in. Not using government money, but using our money. And in the stimulus package, watching the ABC News tonight with Charles Gibson, we've done a great job in bailing out Iraq. If you watch the 6 o'clock news at 6:30 ABC News tonight, you will see the difference in the rebuilding of Iraq. Some safe areas where you can drive an automobile now, where business is conducted, where building is going on, and that's fine. But the government of the United States didn't bail out Iraq. We, the taxpayers, have not only been bailing out the United States, but we've been bailing out Iraq and Afghanistan too. So don't feel proud for the Republican Party or the Democrat Party because Iraq is being rebuilt. Be proud of yourself because it's our money that's doing it. And will we ever get paid back from Iraq, the third richest oil producing country in the world? We deal now in segregated issues. The war is one appropriation, and the stimulus package is something else, and talk is something else. Collectively, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of money going down the hill, and it's your money and my money, and you're going to pay for it eventually. I have mentioned many times before, and I'll mention it again to you folks, until you learn how money works in America. Last week, the market went up from about 6,600 to over 7,000 today. And of course, the boobus Americans and the financial whiz-bangs on radio and television and the Democrats and the Obama administration are saying, well, the stimulus package must be working because it reflects on the market. And everybody's cheering. Well, gee, maybe Obama's really doing a good job. The stimulus package is kicking in, and the stock market is reflecting it. Excuse me. Well, let me tell you this. As the stock market went up in the last 12 days, unemployment went up exactly the same percentage. Now, I don't know how many of you people are business oriented, but if I lay off for 139,000 people in 1 week, my profit margin, if I'm doing the same amount of business, is going to go up. I can show a bigger profit with the same productivity, with less employees, less health benefits, unemployment compensation, matching Social Security funds. Of course my stock is going to go up. My cost of operation has gone down. Now, if you want to get elated, you get elated when the unemployment rate goes down and the market goes up. Because there is a reflection then that productivity, distribution, and sales are going up, which means my company is now going up. This is a false reading on the stock market as the unemployment figure goes up. Now, I learned that in Basic Economics 101 when I was in high school. Didn't Jim Cramer learn this? Didn't these whiz-bangs that are financial experts all over the dial know that? And so the information that we really get is false information. It's information that it's agenda created either by government or by investment companies or portfolio managers. But how can you get elated when 168,000 people are laid off and the market goes up and they're getting all excited? How wonderful it is. The market's going up, while the unemployment figures are also going up. I'm Irv Homer. Our chat room is open. Our telephone line is open at 215-253-8877. Irv, how does the government expect small business to cover their spending? I believe Obama answered that today with more loans to small business. Does this sound fiscally sound to you? The answer is no. Once again, Obama is using the taxpayers' money to give to another taxpayer called small business to cover their spending instead of making money available to the small business to carry on their business. Small business in America is no different than consumers in America. And the whole concept of America's capitalist system today is not based on cash assets. And let me impress upon you that you can have all the cash in the world, but they want to know what your credit number is. You can have the most productive small business in the country, but what is your credit score? We have evolved from World War II until today, after Korea, after Vietnam, that incidentally we're still paying the debt off. We haven't paid off the Vietnam War. We haven't paid off the Korean War. We haven't collected from countries that owe us money from World War II yet. So credit in business and in personal life has become a way of existence. And without credit, the country under capitalism we have today cannot work. Now, credit was not conceived by Marx or Lenin or Trotsky or communists or socialists. And why the pundits, the bloviators on radio and television, don't tell people that credit buying under capitalism was an instrument of the failure of capitalism in America. Capitalism cannot operate in America, or any capitalist country cannot operate without borrowing. And I've given you a list of books not to read. Many people do not understand how American capitalism works, because there is Russian capitalism, there is communist capitalism, there is Korean capitalism, there is Indian capitalism, there is Italian capitalism, there's Spanish capitalism, there's French capitalism. And do you think anybody knows what the hell they're talking about? The answer is no. And that's why you've got the bloviators like Limbrain and Insanity scaring the bejabbers out of you that the country's going socialist. Well, capitalism in America can be easily explained. And why credit has become an instrument that makes capitalism work in America. And that's why your credit score is so important. Let's say you take 5 men. They each have $5 and sit down and play poker. After a brief period of time, the one player now has $25 and the other 4 players have 0. What's the option? That game of capitalism called poker, where all the assets are owned and controlled by one person, cannot continue any longer. Unless 2 things happen. The player with the $25 establishes credit to the other 4 players to continue the game. Eventually, the gentleman with the $25 loans the money to the other 4 players. They play the game, and now one of the other 4 players accumulates the $25. Now, the one that originally loaned the $25 has to get paid back. So how much money do the other 4 players have? This one has $2, that one has $10, $15, $20. They loan each other. Credit is then established because there's only so many assets in the game. There's only $25 in the game. To keep the game going, you must establish credit. Established on anticipated revenue. What am I going to make in the future to pay it off? Well, business now operates on credit. How much can we borrow and how much can we expand on the anticipated revenue that we'll be able to pay back the people we borrowed it from? Now, the people that they borrowed it from have to borrow it from other people, namely the banks. So the banks loan the money to the creditors. The creditors then go broke. The bank then goes broke. So now they come to the source of revenue called the government, who prints all the money you need. So the country has been broke since about 1950-55, at which time the big credit boom started with credit cards and with prime rate mortgages. And let's loan that money out to keep that game going, because we can't say the country's bankrupt. Because between the rich and their foundations and their endowments have sucked all the money out of circulation, the only thing left is credit. Anticipated revenue. I'll buy a car, hopefully I'll be able to pay it off. I'll buy a house, hopefully I'll be able to pay it off. The government then sells bonds on anticipated revenue, where the government says, we hope we collect enough money from the taxpayer so we can pay them off. So for the last 45 years or so, we have not dealt with capitalism, or capital rather, but we've dealt with credit. And that's the Ponzi scheme. The government has been involved in Ponzi schemes. Corporations have been involved in Ponzi schemes. The Federal Reserve Bank is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all, because the Federal Reserve Bank creates the money and the credit out of thin air. It's not federal. There's no reserve. It's a private bank that created money of credit. Use this for exchange of goods and services, but there's nothing backing it except the anticipated revenue that we will get from the suckers called the United States government when they borrow money from us. So the whole system for the last 45 years has been based on credit. And what's my credit score? And in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, countries are also graded with what their credit score is. Why do you think China loaned us so much money? Because our credit score was the highest in the world with our productivity. What China didn't realize was that we were sending all our producing companies out of the country, and China is now sucking the hind tit of the cow, because it not only is extending the credit, but it also has to produce the goods and services for the United States, and they loan us money so we can buy their products. Does that make sense? You don't have to be a rocket scientist, ladies and gentlemen, to figure it out. And no small group of talk show hosts such as myself and others, unfortunately, who no longer here, are a voice in the wilderness. Because people don't want to learn today on radio, they want to be entertained. And you are entertained, but you're not learning anything. And none of the people on radio or television are jeopardizing their multi-million-dollar incomes. When I hear them say, we are being, guys making $8-9 million a year, and he's being, his standard of living is being affected, and yet the boobuses fall for this, don't understand how money works. It boggles my mind. AIG, who is under attack right now, and Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, who are the perpetrators of the destruction of the mortgage industry and should be arrested for fraud while they were in Congress. We'll go into the inadequate representation that the people of America have. Claim that the $167 million that they're paying out in bonuses or contractual agreements that they had with certain employees for a job well done. And those contracts were given to these people in good faith. And those people want that bonus money. Now, under the Bush administration, not the Obama administration, the first TARP loan to AIG was given to AIG to bail them out. Not to change anything within the structure of AIG, including the contractual bonuses that were there and approved of not only by the board of directors of AIG, but by the government under the Bush administration that loaned them the $137 million. So the Bush administration gave AIG a bailout of $137 million, knowing full well that there was bonus money in there for those 5,600 employees. The Bush administration knew it and gave it to them anyway. The Congress knew about it and allowed them to get it anyway. And now, in addition to TARP, the stimulus package comes up now to protect the investments that AIG has, and up pops the devil from the Bush administration, which is the approval of AIG to conduct business as they are and as they were without changing anything, with no review of bonus contracts, no review of anything. Here's $167 million. Conduct your business. We're bailing you out until this fiscal crisis disappears. And now the Obama reform administration comes in with politicians that he appointed that didn't pay their own taxes. And they're screaming that these people should receive these bonuses. They've got a contractual agreement that was approved by the very government that Obama represents. And if you make a contract with the United States government, the government, in my opinion, regardless of which administration is in office, should be required to meet those financial obligations that they assumed. So this is not a question of whether these guys are greedy or whether Obama and his bunch of non-taxpaying administrators or appointees disagree with. But it's the responsibility of the government to pay those. Certainly it's distasteful. Certainly I object to it. Certainly it's taxpayers' money. But it was the Bush administration that agreed to it, and the thieving politicians that are worried about bonuses given to people in AIG when they themselves have been stealing, misappropriating American taxpayers' money and making you believe that it's the government's money that's bailing them out. Certainly it's distasteful to see $167 million be paid to executives and members of an organization that is failing. But let's deal with the truth as to what happened with AIG. The bailout is one thing to protect the investors of AIG. The bonuses are something different, approved by the United States government for 5,600 employees of AIG. And if the Obama administration gets away with violating those contracts, going to the court to violate those contracts, to violate those bonus contracts, they should be thrown out of office. And why should Obama be responsible? It wasn't his administration that agreed to it in the first place. Is he covering up for George Bush? Is he covering up for those Republicans that he reached across the aisle to? Snow, Collins, and Specter? What's the reason, Mr. Obama, Mr. President? Give us the reason you're covering it up. You know why they're covering it up? Because they don't want you to know how lousy the Bush administration was and how lousy this Obama administration is going to be. That's the reason. Our telephone number is 215-253-8877. One more topic that troubles me, Obama's National Security Service. What is this? I don't know. I don't think the question is topical that I can understand what you're basically saying. If I think it is what you're trying to put forth, dear writer, you hear that America is making itself vulnerable, and I constantly hear this, I'm for a strong defense, I'm for a smaller government, I'm for. They're so full of this Hannity and they're so full of crap. Are you trying to tell me, and if they're right, I'm really scared, if the conservative folks in America think that Obama and the 535 representatives in Washington are lowering the national security standards to protect them and Americans, I think you're sick. Even liberals don't want to die. Even liberals don't want the country to be attacked. Even liberals like to have a nice lifestyle. Even liberals want their kids to be alive. So I don't understand why the right wing is attacking until they can prove it to me that the liberal Democrat Party under Obama is reducing national security, placing or endangering the Americans. Irv, this rally in the stock market is nothing more than a rally in a bear market where professional traders are manipulating prices to suck the herd into the market and then sell what they bought at lower prices. I doubt very much this rally will last too long. Well, there's no question that the stock market, with the portfolio managers and the professional traders, don't give a rat's behind about the country or about the investors. They're interested in one thing, and that is to falsely pump up the market, dump it out, let the market drop. This is capitalism at its finest. Capitalism has no heart, is not a charity, it is not a benevolent daddy, any more than Wall Street is. And the name of the game is to make as many bucks as you can. Let the buyer beware. Let the suckers be sheep. It's why I refer to Boobas America as sheeple. The government, the fraudulent stock market investors, the professional portfolio managers are only interested in one thing, their commission and how much money they can make on the market and how the market can be manipulated. The market is the biggest manipulated gambling investment, more so than the 11 casinos in Atlantic City. And when you have billions of dollars to play that market and watch it go and then bust it and sell out, why should they do it? They're not in business as a charity. They're in business to screw the guy who doesn't know how to play the market. That's simple, my dear friend. You're right, and I doubt very much whether this rally will last too long. As I said, as long as unemployment is going up, the market will also go up because the profit of the corporation will go up as the expense of the corporation diminishes. When I see unemployment go down and I see the market go up, that is a true indication as to what the economy of the country is. Irv, this is Brian from Bridgeton. Did you see Jon Stewart and Jim Cramer? If you saw them on The Daily Show, what were your impressions of that moment? It's amazing to me that it took Jon Stewart, a comedian, a commentator, an entertainer, whatever he may be, to be able to nail what I consider to be a boardwalk huckster of Ginsu knives and pots and pans. I think it was a brilliant part of Jon Stewart. I'm not equating myself to Jon Stewart, but I've been criticized by program directors on radio stations around the city for criticizing people who were professional advisors, stock providers on our station. I know it was wrong. You're not supposed to knock other talent that's on the station. I just couldn't take it when I heard some of these false ideologies that were being put forth. And I had to impress one gentleman who was a financial advisor on the station that it wasn't personal. See, people, when their opinion is challenged and when their ideology is destroyed, they think it's personal. And I am not a vindictive person personally, unless you cross me. And if I find out you're going to do harm of any kind to any family member of mine or friend of mine, I'll get you. May not be today, may not be tomorrow, but I'll get you some way. And it won't be violence, it won't be physical. I'm not going to kidnap your grandmother. I'm not going to cut your fingers off. But I'll get you. And the misinformation that has been put out on radio stations through a thing called infomercials. The first infomercial I did on radio, I was asked by Mark Howard at Channel 6, was that an infomercial or was that a guest? I said, it's only important for me to know and not you. I have many problems with financial advice. To the telephone. Good afternoon, good evening. How are you, sir? You're on the air.
How you doing, Mr. Homer?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Okay, hi. I'm calling from Lakeland, Florida.
Right, welcome.
Good. I used to live in Philadelphia for quite a while, and I used to listen to you a lot.
Thank you.
I was going through my parents' old records and her papers. My mom saved everything.
Right.
They're both deceased. But I came across my father's draft cards in World War II, and I was going to ask your opinion since you're a World War II veteran. It seems like every 6 months they sent him a new draft card of a classification. Is that what they did in those days?
What was the original classification?
The original one in December 17th, 1941,
Right.
It was 3A.
Right.
And then it went down to 2B.
Yeah.
Then the one I have here was from June 1944 was 1A.
As the
1A?
Yeah, 1A means he was ready to leave.
Well, he was 33 years old with 2 children then, but I guess they took him that way too.
Right, up until 35, even with 2 children. The draft classification during World War II changed as more and more personnel were required. And also, there was, let's say that you were at draft age and you had a child that was 17, you got 1 draft classification, and then the child became 18. Well, now you no longer had a minor, so your draft classification changed again. And as more and more personnel was needed, they raised the age limit to 35. Originally, it was 27. So it depended on a lot of things. A, what the personal life of the draftee was, and number 2, the age of the draftee, and number 3, how bad did they need the personnel. But did you also see on his original draft card that they want to know what race he was? And on my on mine,
Yes.
it had colored, white.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes.
Right.
I see it right on.
You had to identify whether you were colored or white.
Yeah.
As I said to a caller today on my program, I said, Do you realize that I fought in a war in which blacks were not permitted to serve in my outfit because they were black and the military was segregated?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm looking at this card. It says white, Negro, Oriental, Indian, and Filipino.
Right.
And it says complexion, and it has marked off Rudy. What that means?
Ruddy.
Or,
Yeah, it's
Ruddy. Okay.
sort of a Charles Bronson look.
Okay. Okay. And also, I found my parents' old real estate tax bill from 1935, and it was a total of $23.72. And it was a city tax of $15.39 and a school tax $8.33.
Those were the days, my friend. I thought they'd never end. Well, that was before.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Homer.
Thank you, Jim. That was before we had, quote, credit. To the chat room and their telephone number, once again, 215-253-8877. We welcome calls from all over the world. That call came from Lakeland, Florida. Irv, I heard a statistic the other day claiming that the money used in the stimulus bill would have been able to provide $18,500 to each taxpayer in the country. Don't you think we should have received more bang for buck by just sending out checks? I agree to that. The only problem is the stimulus money is borrowed money. It's credit. If the government had $18,500 in cash to give to each taxpayer in the country, they wouldn't have to borrow money from China. So what this is credit. They can't give $18,500 worth of credit to everybody because who's going to accept the credit? They need cash. I remember years ago when I was a real hellraiser on radio. I'm kind of calm now. But I wrote a letter to the Secretary of Treasury then. I forget who it was. Frances Perkins, I believe was her name. And at that time, they came out that each individual taxpayer in America owed, I think, like $6,500. And the comedians were making a joke out of it by saying, well, you know why a baby, when it's held upside down, when its firstborn cries? Because he just found out how much money he owes the government as his share of the national debt. That was a joke, and that's why babies cry when they're first born. So I wrote a letter to the Secretary of Treasury, and I said, listen, I pay a lot of taxes, and I would like to know that if I wrote you a check now for $12,500 and paid off my share of the national debt, if you leave me alone. One of these days I got to pull out the answer I got from the Treasury Department. I think 2 more signatures, they would have had me committed. No, my dear friend, it is credit, not $18,500. Irv, will Obama change the role of the FCC and try to return to a more regulated radio system and break up the big radio monopolies? There's 2 questions in this one. He doesn't have to change the role of the FCC. All he has to do is bring back the FCC to its original concept, therefore breaking the big radio monopolies. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is that radio, by definition, as I got into radio, was to serve the community interest without prurient desires, which meant you had to handle local radio stations for local consumption, local news, local entertainment, local programming, not monopolistic radio programs as it is today. But let me ask you something. Radio stations and the monopolies must be broken up to have fair broadcasting. I don't want a fairness doctrine, but I want fair access. to the radio stations, to the broadcasting media. It's not removing anybody from the air. It is more access for diversion of opinion, not monopolistic broadcasting as it exists today. Now, if monopolies were good, why would General Motors make 8 different automobiles? Chevy, Pontiac, GMC. Why do they do that? They're competing with themselves. Why don't they just have, this is a General Motors car, and they'll make a car with different versions? No, they don't want to do that, because they'll break the monopoly rules. You can't have a monopoly. But what the government has done, under the influence of the money moguls, is to make radio monopolistic and syndicated. And let's look at what's happening in the field of newspapers disappearing. How many monopolistic radio magnates like Evergreen and what are some of the other ones? Clear Channel own not only the radio stations and the broadcasting and the monopoly, but also own newspapers, periodicals, ticket agencies, and the entertainers. Now, it just dawned on me, if I owned a radio station that I had full and monopolistic control over, and I also own a newspaper, why should I compete with myself? I can hire Rush Limbaugh, say, or Sean Hannity, and put them on 600 radio stations and give them the news, opinion, information, entertainment, and commercials. Why should I have a newspaper in the same town? I have to pay reporters, I have to pay print, I have to pay truck drivers to deliver the newspaper, I have to worry about lawsuits. I may as well get rid of the newspaper. Just use radio and television as a means of informing the public. Did it ever dawn on you people that maybe the demise of the news print media is being destroyed, lobbied against, to get rid of the print media so that all of the information the public will get will either be from cable news or from the television and radio stations owned and controlled by those major corporations that also own the magazines and the newspapers. America's got used to sound bites and computer information, not reading or education. And one of Philadelphia's leading talk show hosts, and I compliment them when they're right and I criticize them when they're wrong, Michael Smerconish, who is now syndicated around the country, wrote an article in the Philadelphia Sunday Inquirer about the necessity of being and having a newspaper. In the Philadelphia area, the leading state senator, a fellow by the name of Vincent Fumo, was just found guilty today of 137 counts of indictments. And it wasn't the bloviators on television, it wasn't the radio stations, it wasn't the television stations, but the newspaper that is critical right now that filed for bankruptcy, the Philadelphia Inquirer. It was their reporters who dogged Senator Vince Fumo with investigated printed journalism. The people could go back and say, boy, this is what they wrote 10 years ago about this guy, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, in the print media. It was the print media that did the corruption of Senator Vince Fumo in. And that's one of the reasons why it is important to keep newspapers. But is it a conspiracy by the electronic media to drive the print media out of business? I don't know. Once again, As a broadcaster, I am against the fairness doctrine. I am for more access to radio originating locally in the communities. Irv, are the Dems riding a wave of approval that will go to their heads? No. It's not going to their heads. It already is there. What was to be a policy of change for the better by electing Barack Obama and Joe Biden has turned into a coronation nightmare. Barack Obama has been anointed as the second savior of humanity. He will ride that crest of popularity if this country goes to hell in a handbasket, which it very possibly could, under the guidance of Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi. God, I sound like Rush Limbaugh. The Democrat Party is a disgrace in America. And if the Republican Party had any sense, instead of destroying themselves, get rid of them old Republican hacks, the Newt Gingriches, the Dick Morrises, the other old goats in there that were the destruction of the Republican Party, the Mitch McConnells. Get rid of these guys and get some young, vibrant talent in there that doesn't have a political agenda to be the President of the United States, but to be good, solid American conservatives. The Republican Party can capture the hearts and minds of the American people. But what you've got today in the Republican Party is a bigger disgrace as what they've got in the Democrat Party. This Democrat Party should be ashamed of itself for some of its appointees, for some of the suggestions that it's made, for two men who are responsible for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to go down the tubes, Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, to sit there as pompous, arrogant clowns, Democrats, and tell me that it's their fault, not when you have tapes and interviews of Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. We've got to give people homes that they can't afford. What kind of idiocy is this? These people should be impeached, should be thrown out, have no right to be representatives of anybody, and to criticize, to see Barney Frank as a pompous ass, and Chris Dodd, who was a political presidential candidate, to criticize the Republican Party is a disgrace. I don't know, before this Obama administration may be over, I may end up being a Republican conservative. I don't know. I've got to tell the truth as I see it. Irv, why can't Geithner fill a staff, and how important is it? Well, it's important that he fill a staff because you can't handle the job yourself. It is so humongous. Number two, he's going to have trouble finding somebody who will honorably serve with him. This man is tainted by being a tax cheat. And if there is a person, Democrat or Republican, who has a moral code, who will take orders from a tax cheat, who will take orders and instructions from a tax cheat, they're just as guilty as Geithner was. Geithner has no right being there. He should have never been vetted. He should have never been appointed. His appointment should have been overturned. George Bush and some of his appointees to the Supreme Court, to Attorney General, those people, both male and female, did less to accelerate their removal from office than some of these Democrats that Obama is putting in the cabinet. I'm sounding more like a Republican conservative every day, but it happens to be the truth. What do you think of these Tea Party protests? They were holding tax revolt signs at the last one. There were 4,000 of them and hardly any news coverage. Well, the media is complicit, as I said, on television because they are licensed. And the government has these professional broadcasters with monopolistic tendencies that they'll shut them down in a heartbeat. You don't see anti-war demonstrations on television, and you're not going to see these protests on television. because the government influence under the Homeland Security Act has the right to censor the television and radio media because they're licensed by the federal government. My question is, why don't the print media cover it? The answer is the right-wing broadcasters will criticize the print media, and the print media runs scared. In addition to this, if you're against big government, to the way that Limbaugh and Hannity and the conservative broadcasters say you are, why don't you lead a tax revolt yourself, guys? You know what, 20 million tax protesters that will file their taxes and place them in escrow? You're not refusing to pay your taxes, you place them in escrow. 20 million taxpayers putting their money in escrow until the government reduces the size of the. No, it don't work that way. These guys make money out of yelling and screaming and doing nothing. Limbaugh is not going to tell you about 4,000 people holding tax revolt signs. He will be complicit in aiding and abetting non-willful failure to file their taxes. He don't want to place a chance on that. Hannity don't want to take a chance on that. And of course, the big monopolistic radio chains don't want to take a chance. So they'll stir up the pot. They'll have the little guy demonstrate, but they ain't putting their behind at risk. I'm Irv Homer. Thanks so much for listening. We're off tomorrow night. The Ron Tech Show will be on tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with all your computer problems. Thanks so much for listening. Look at the facts on the AGI case. Don't listen to the sound bites. Read the print media. Enjoy the entertainment that you get on radio and television. But if you want the facts, go to the printed word. I'm Irv Homer. We'll see you on Wednesday.